have the blessing of a very faithful and godly mother. And what I know is this, is that God is faithful, and he will redeem all the unredeemable things, and he will fix in my kids' lives what he wants to fix and what they submit to him to fix. And that I do feel sometimes like I think sometimes, they're going to remember that forever. And then I feel like he waves his God wand over it, and somehow they kind of forget all the dumb things I've said and done. And they by God's grace, are very gracious to me. This says I've given you a piece of paper, which is a lie because I forgot them on the counter at home at 6 this morning. But at the end, if we have time, I'm happy to answer some of the questions that you may have about parenting or grandparenting. I've got 3 very unique children, and I don't want to use this as a time to talk about my children, but here I go talking about them. I've got 3 very unique children. One of my children, I hope you don't think I'm talking against them. I'm going to try to be ambiguous so you don't know which one is which if you find me on Facebook. One of my children has a very big personality, and the minute this child walks in the room, you cannot miss it. I've given that away. They have a love for performing and are at second year at drama school in London, studying musical theater. All he wants to do is be on stage and have everyone clap for him. This child loves the Lord and loves being at church, and he serves with the music team. But as far as connecting with others, he finds it really tough because he's got 1 foot in the musical theater world and 1 foot at church, and those are 2 very different worlds. This child in particular needs lots of words of affirmation and processing and talking and lots of talking. We process a lot through talking. He's great at giving gifts, but he is rotten when it comes to helping around the house. Another one of my children is steady, solid, quiet, very quiet. They like their alone time, and has a super solid relationship with Jesus. There you go. She loves him with all her heart. But I will say, water at the ready, some of the things that we've dealt with her in the last couple years have rocked my world. They've been huge things. She's intentional with her friendships. She loves her friends dearly. She sees my needs uniquely, both like practical, like mom's exhausted, I need to help with the housework, or my emotional needs. She's just intuitive with that. She is wise beyond her years. She said to me, you'll find this funny later. I asked my kids for advice. I said, what would you want to say as kids to a group of people that want to know about kids? And she said, well, it's not really fair to ask me, because she said, I'm about 87. She's just an old soul. No, 87 isn't old. 87 is young. And she is a joy to parent. Conversations with her only happen late at night when the lights are out in my bed, when I say, oh, mom's really tired. I'm going to go to bed. If you want to come hang out with me and have a cuddle. She gets in bed and we're just, chit-chatting, and then all of a sudden it's like it loosens and she just starts talking because the lights are out and there's no pressure, and it's not, I'm not staring at her going, what do you want to talk about? Because that's really scary, isn't it? My final child. This one started off with lots of difficulties, adopted at age 3 from an orphanage in another country. He's dealt with mental illness, he's had cancer, he's had extreme behavioral issues. He struggled in his relationship with Jesus. And although he was baptized 2 years ago, he's currently not in a place of believing everything. Some of it could be true, Mom, but not all of it. And for that reason, he said, I'm not going to call myself a Christian right now. This child is the most generous child I've ever met, and he would do anything for anyone. He reads a room instantly. He does ministry with us, even though that he's not walking with Jesus right now. He will walk in a room where we're working with children. We work with children a lot, and he finds the most hurting child in the room. They're in care, they've been abused, they've been adopted, they are struggling. He finds that child, and the child is hiding under a table that the leaders can't get to do anything. This child connects with them, and the next thing you know, this child's participating because my son has him in the group. And that is, even though he currently has 2 E's and a U in his A levels, he's brilliant when it comes to people, and he can sense and read and love people unlike anyone I've ever met. He only processes conversations whilst playing card games because he's not got the parent eyes or the parent pressure, and because he's kind of off the spectrum ADHD, because he's focused on playing the card game, that's when he can talk with me. So we play a lot of cards. Why am I telling you all this? Is it because I want to talk about my kids and I like talking about them? Yes. But more importantly, what I want you to hear is that I have 3 very unique, real, challenging, lovely children. I'm a real mom with real struggles, and I think maybe what you would have heard in their stories is that they're different, and I need to serve them and love them uniquely and differently. And that's why I would say to you, again, don't copy what I'm doing, because it may or may not work for you. Feel free to pick and choose what works, and please, 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 would you please ask the Lord to guide you? Would you ask him how to help you parent and grandparent these precious, precious children? As I said, I did a funny exercise with my children as I prepared for this. I said to each of them, what are the things you would want to tell a group of parents and grandparents about parenting you? One surprise, my 87-year-old, she said, Mom, meaningful friendships are really rare, but they're very important. She's also female, and I think that does play into this. Friendships are so influential, so making sure that the friends your kids do have are a good influence is really important. She went on to say, it's very important that parents speak into the friendships their kids have. Even if the teen doesn't want their help or want their parents to know their friends, it's important to push on this one. She said teens spend so much time with their friends, and it's important that you know your kids, grandkids, have good quality friendships. Then she said, once they do have good quality friendships, lighten up and let us spend time with them. She said, if they're good influences, it's important for us to hear not only from our parents, but also from our friends. And as long as they're good, encouraging, solid, uplifting friendships. She said, I think I probably would have said, we know more than you think we know more than you think we know. And then she said, but maybe that's not really true. She said, but we do know stuff. And she said, I wanted to mention the importance of the art of compromise. She said, it's quite important that when we as parents are listening to our kids and grandkids, that we value their opinions and thoughts. Ready for my parenting fail? Yesterday, she and I, we hardly ever have any conflict, but we had just a minute of conflict. And she said, don't you remember that I told you to value my opinion? And I thought, well, I've done it now, haven't I? One of my kids kept it short and sweet. And this really, he said, we don't always want the parent-child relationship. Sometimes we just want a friend. He said, sometimes we don't want that power dynamic. I'm so thankful I asked him. He's almost 20, and I've been asking the Lord, how do I strike that right balance of parenting him on what's important and also letting go and letting him fail and fall and bruise his knees. I happened to be able to go out with him last night. It was my birthday present and his Christmas present. We saw a show together. And in the back of my mind the whole time was, Lord, help me to be a friend in the right moments and help me to be a parent in the right moments. And again, we can't just be our kid's friend, can we? Because we do have to discipline. But as he is almost 20, it's time for me to start backing up. Another child of mine, when asked if he had anything to contribute, said, not really. All right then. So I kind of want to take a three-pronged approach today to parenting kids. Firstly, the joys. Secondly, the struggles. And then finally, practical ways that we can show them love. And why do we show them love? Well, first of all, because we love them most of the time, but mostly because I believe that we are conduits of God's love. And we love them because he first loved us, right? So, the joys of teens, kids, I often say, the good moments are really good. They're just few and far between sometimes. And there's nothing quite like having a meaningful and deep conversation with your child, is there? I mean, when it's good, it's really, really good. You can see them taking ownership, developing into a responsible human being, seeing them grow in their faith and sometimes in their excitement for the Lord. I'm watching one of mine right now who's so excited about evangelism, and she's excited about taking care of God's creation. She wants to learn and read the Bible, and being in a relationship with people who love the Lord are really important for her. That's really exciting for me. Another friend, another one of mine, my eldest, has become really responsible living away from home. He's cooking and cleaning, occasionally, shopping, budgeting, saving money, working a job. And the third one of mine is finally brushing his teeth and putting on deodorant every day. So I feel like that's a win. I remember my mom used to say all the time that the thing she was most excited about in life was that my brother and I were walking with the Lord. We were in high school or secondary school and university at the time, and I remember thinking, that's a funny thing to say, the thing you're most excited about. And now that I am older, I know that is what I am most excited about. And even with my one, and we'll talk about this in a minute, even with my one who's not walking with the Lord, I tell him all the time, I want this for you, not because I think it's going to solve every one of your issues or problems in life, but because I know what it means. I know what it means to not be walking with the Lord. And I'm not going to scaremonger him, but the reality is that is the most important thing that I need to keep saying to him carefully and in ways that God will allow me to say it to him. So what are some of the joys? And this is audience participation time because I don't want to talk the whole time. What are some of the joys that you find with parenting and grandparenting? And I call it popcorn. You can just pop up your answers. You don't have to raise hands or be orderly. I know, there's no cue. Just popcorn up what you find are the joys for you.
Hugs from a grandson that's nearly 17.
Okay.
When we visit.
Yeah. What else?
Some of the amazing things that just come out of their mouths.
Yeah.
When your grandchildren tell you that they love you.
Yeah. I can't imagine. If I think I'm a puddle now, if the Lord gives grandchildren, whoo, watch out.
Just when they say mom or granny.
Yeah.
When they're all getting on?
Yes. Yes. Sometimes we'll go, it's quiet. Not like in a bad quiet, but like they're getting on. It's shocking. It can be shocking.
Teaching my granddaughter to knit.
Oh.
She's 23.
So when your 3-year-old who you didn't really think understood about someone dying says they were Jesus now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, watching small children grasp gospel truths is unbelievable to me. And that's when you see Jesus saying, let the little children come to me, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Yeah. What else are joys for you?
And my great-granddaughter
Great! Yes.
said, will you come and play with me, Gigi? Calls me Gigi for great-granddaughter.
That might be the winning comment. We're moving on from that one. That's lovely. So here we are at the section of struggles with children and teens. We could have an interesting one with this section, and I really don't want it to turn into a whinge, a whine, a moan, a complaint. But it's because we could go on and on and on. And there are lots of struggles and challenges. And if I'm honest, I was a struggle and a challenge. I really was. I won't tell any stories. But I did get smacks a few times at school. I would never tell any parent at any stage, oh, I have it much harder, because every stage is uniquely difficult and challenging in different ways. I do remember my mom saying to me, though, in all of her encouragement, that adult children are the hardest to parent. Do grandparents agree with that? Oh, I'm not ready. I'm ill-equipped. But every stage does have their joys and challenges. But children and grandchildren are not for the faint of heart. It's a lot of work and a lot of effort, and sometimes, well, a lot of times we get our feelings hurt, or we feel kicked down or unappreciated. But God sees, doesn't he? God sees. And I have to believe that he sees us in similar ways, not disappointed, not in a look down his nose face, but I want you to see how much I love you. I want you to see how much I've given, how much I've done for you, because I love you. But yet he's always right there, ready to pick us up and dust us off and give us another go. And I'm so thankful for that.
Excuse me.
Yes.
Can I just say?
Yes, please.
When we are trying to console young people or people of any age, it's sometimes tempting to say, "Oh, I know how you feel," and unless we've been in exactly that particular situation, we can't know.
Yeah, we have to be really careful not to minimize how they're feeling, don't we? We can say, that sounds tough, that sounds difficult, but sometimes when we say, I know, we've taken the power like, well, I've been there and I'm fine, what's your problem? Which is not helpful. But you're absolutely right. We have to listen well and not try to minimize what they're feeling. Yeah.
And even if there are two people who we're trying to console about the same thing, the same thing can affect each person differently. Yeah. So that's right, that's important.
And one might want to talk through it, and the other one might want space, and one might want a cuddle, and one might say, just leave me alone. We have to be really sensitive to how they work. So what are some of the challenges that you find? And again, we don't want to disparage or use names or throw anyone under the bus, but what are some of the challenges that we face with parenting and grandparenting?
I think
Eating disorders. Yeah, huge.
I think the internet, that it really is. There are so many points of issue, too many to
Yeah, whether it's social media, whether it's the time, whether it's the image, the story that the teens especially feel like they have to live up to, or pornography, or all the trappings, just the time away from social human connection and interaction. It's a dark and slippery slope, isn't it? Yeah. What else are challenges that you find?
The mobile phones. You go to visit and they want to be on their
Hold on
phone.
1 second. Hold on. I want to make you feel like you're with your.
That's what it's like. You go to visit, the older ones are on their phone, and you think, why have I come all this way? And you're just on your phone all the time.
Yeah.
You think they're listening, but I don't think they are. But it just seems a shame they can't put them down for a while. And I think it's a big hindrance for youngsters.
I surprised mine the other day when I said I didn't have a mobile phone until actually my youngest was born, I think, and they were like, what? Yes. What else are challenges?
Looking on when your grandson can't get a job, no matter how hard he's trying. And nothing seems to come up.
I brought my children up that they had to be organised, things had to be put in place, whereas I find my grandchildren, the doings everywhere.
Yes. I'm gonna have to already pray through that one.
friends, their particular peers that they hang around with. I mean, I feel like social media controls their whole life from the time they get up to the time they go to bed. Because you don't know, because I go like do nights, I don't know what she does behind her door. And I don't know what she's following, because as I say, I know people say we should be in control of what she's doing, but then you get totally interfering as a parent.
Yeah. I was told that this week. We turned phones off at a certain time in our house, and I was told I was the worst parent ever. Okay. Fine. It's hard. I will let you in on a secret. My because you'll never meet them. My in-laws love their phones, and when they come over, you can't tell anybody. When they come over, they get on our Wi-Fi, and my husband can control anyone's like turning off their Wi-Fi. So oftentimes he'll turn off his parents' Wi-Fi, and they'll be like, oh, "My phone's not working." He's like, "Oh, must be London internet." But it's the truth. We can all have the temptation to escape to here. That was dramatic. Sorry. We can escape here really easily, and it is a huge issue. It's a huge issue. Anything else that someone wants to raise before I?
I think that the current research in the effects of the internet on our children and the phones clearly indicates that is a battle that's worth fighting.
It is.
So if it means you have to be the worst mum in the world and collect those screens in at 9 o'clock, then I would urge all of you to keep going. And the younger you can put that in place, the easier it will be.
And I would even say, and this is not directed at you. I promise you. Even if you have to pull back and be the worst mom in the world, I know we were doing this, but I'm really seeing the negative effects in all of us. So we're going to pull it back. It's okay. It's okay to be the bad guy, I would say. And make sure you're equally following that up with love, and I'm offering my time in replacement for, or would you, that's a movie you would, no, it's a screen, but what's a movie you'd like to watch, or what's a game you'd like to play, or you want to make some cookies together, something, offering that so that it's not just the, what do I do now? I would say like, well, why don't you do some laundry or some dishes?
I think disappointment in their decisions with faith as well. You've gone through your life taking them to church and praying for them, and then they can make either very clear decisions that they don't want that faith, or they're going to think
and I'm going to be very transparent with you right now. As I mentioned above, this is a really tough year for us as parents, and can I add, as missionaries. We live our lives telling people about Jesus and sharing the gospel, and then inviting people to make a decision for Jesus. So we feel a little bit at a loss of how do we parent a child who doesn't want to follow Jesus right now, and really doesn't want any part of church. We've had very tough conversations with this child, and I've explained that until you move out, or until you're 18, that church is what we do. Now, this is how we've chosen to handle it, and it doesn't mean you have to handle it this way. But we've said church is what we do, and until you're 18, and at 18 we do things like you have to pay your own phone bill, you have to contribute to house, minimal house costs, things like that. But until you're 18 and you move out, this is just what we're going to do. And I think the initial reaction was, well, that's ridiculous. You can't make me do that. And this child has chosen to come along. I can tell he's angry about it. I can tell he doesn't want to be there. But there haven't been too many knockdown dragouts about it. And for that, we're grateful. I have told myself 100 times that I'm a failure as a parent, as a Christian, as a missionary. All those messages from the father of lies, Satan, have entered my head. And I think that there's this bit about parenting where we feel ashamed at times. How come I'm the only one with a child who, or I'm so embarrassed about this issue in my child's life, or, I used to say to myself, I can control a school of 500 kids, and I can't control 3 of my own. I often feel alone in my parenting. I don't have a lot of Christian friends, especially with teens. The few Christian friends that I have they have younger kids. As I mentioned at Globe Church, I am like I'm literally one of the oldest there. I think there's one couple that's a little bit older than us. And my non-Christian friends, obviously, I'm not going to go to them for Christian parenting advice. They still have things to offer. There's still things we can talk through. And it's a great way for me to share my faith. This is what we're struggling with, and this is how we're handling it. And I don't suggest that we air all of our dirty laundry. I don't want to disparage my kids. I hope you don't feel like I have today. But I do think it's important for us to know that we're not alone. That we have trusted people in our life that will help us normalize things and feel like we're not the only ones that are going through it. People that will listen to us, point us back to Jesus and God's word, and people that will rejoice with us when things are happy and cry with us when things hurt, and especially pray with and for us. And I know I am very blessed to have a friend that I have that relationship with, and her kids, like I said, are much younger. But I can say anything to her, and I could trust her, and she will turn that into prayer with me and for my children. I am not sitting here saying it's easy, but I think what we just have to keep doing is have to keep going to the Lord. We have to be faithful, and we can't give up. I was talking to a lady who's not in here. That's fine. And I was saying I was really convicted last summer when I was having a huge boohoo. I was at a missionary conference, and I was in the session, what do you do when your kids aren't following Jesus? And I was having a huge boohoo, just sitting there privately crying, and I just said, it hurts because I know the consequences. I know what not following Jesus means. And this lady, who was way more American than I'll ever be, got in my face. She was like, Kimberly, God is not done with your child yet. Don't you finish his story. Let God write his story. And I was like, okay. But that's the truth. The story is not over. The battle has not been lost. I've said it in 8 different ways today. God can redeem what seems unredeemable. He can save what's lost. And we just have to keep going to him. And there are other people to tell about him in the meantime. And I won't stop telling this child that God is chasing after him, because I see it every day. And he's going out with 2 20-somethings tonight, rock climbing, and I know they're going to talk to him about Jesus. And where I am not successful, and it's not my job to be successful, it's God's job, but where I'm not successful, God is still at work, and he's still putting people in this child's path in particular, and he's putting people in the path of your kids, grandkids, those that you love, and we need to be praying to that end. Jesus, please do your work. Get me out of the way if you need to. Please, please don't give up on this child or grandchild.
Can I just say?
Yes, please. Gigi, I am all ears.
I had 2 grandchildren, and they were both brought up but of course they drifted away because of what's happened in the church, and got no time for church. But I said to my grandson, when he's gone to Canada, emigrated to Canada, I said, just remember, you may have gone away from the Lord, but the Lord holds you in his hand.
That's right.
Once you have been his, he won't let you go. He'll give you a long piece of string, and he will draw you in gradually.
Yeah, yeah.
And
And that grandchild knows that his Gigi is praying for him. Yeah, absolutely. So moving into kind of the third phase of how can we be supportive and love and champion the kids, and how can we point them to Jesus? The first thing I would say to all of us is we have to be praying. I cannot stress to you enough the importance of praying. And that is probably the only important thing I'll say in this whole talk, is we need to be praying. I remember when my 2 oldest were younger, and they were arguing, and I was frustrated, and I called up my mom and I said, they just won't say sorry to each other. They won't apologize. And she's like, well, stop being the Holy Spirit. It's not your job. And I was like, oh, okay. The truth is, it is my job to pray for them and not make them do anything, not force them. I have to parent, I have to correct, those kinds of things, but God needs to be the one at work in their lives. His power is more important than my power, and his power is lasting power, and mine is quite short-lived. My mother-in-law is very faithful. Lucky her, she has 7 grandchildren. And so every day of the week she prays for one of them, and the ones that are married now, their spouse. And she texts or emails or whatever, sends them a message on their day, and always, I'm praying for you on their day. And some of mine love that, and some of mine are like, oh, I heard from Grandma, she's praying for me today. But they know that their grandmother is praying for them. And she'll say to them, do you have anything you want me to pray about? And they mostly ignore her, which I chide them for. But they know that she's praying. And that is such a ministry that all of us can do. I would encourage you to meet them where they are. I am not saying get on your social media, but I know she's really struggled because she was like, well, I've emailed them. And I'm like, Mary, they don't use email. You're going to have to find another platform. So she's like, well, I've texted them. And I was like, well, mine don't ever text me back. Find a way that you can connect with them, even if you don't want WhatsApp or Instagram or Facebook, or find out how you can connect with them. I especially like the ones where you can see if they've seen your message, but that's just me. Pray with your kids, pray for your kids, pray before meals, before bed, before they walk out the door, in a moment of crisis, pray. Text them, I'm praying for you. I try not to be obnoxious with my one who's struggling right now, but every couple of texts, sometimes it's like, I love you, or hope you have a good day, or hope the test goes well. And every so often it's, I'm praying for you, because I don't want to stop saying it. I don't want him to think that I'm scared to say it to him, because I'm not. I believe in God's power, and I want him to know that God is still at work. I highly recommend, when we first moved here, I am not embarrassed to say we were broke. We were absolutely broke, but we invested in Christian books, and we let our kids buy Christian music. I think it was you still buy it now. I think you just find it for free. I've put a load of books up here if you want to see when we're done. In fact, actually, I'll just go through them real quick. This set of books was recommended to me. They're just like topics. Sorry for anyone that's embarrassed by this, but like sex, suffering and evil, what's life all about, the Holy Spirit, science and God, and the Bible. They're just short little books, but they answer kind of hot button questions. Those were really good. These 3, Hero, Fearless, and Lost, are all by my pastor, John T. Alcock, and they're great for kids. They've got diagrams and